Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to DataPro's Privacy Day training celebration. To commemorate the event of Privacy Day this year, DataPro is offering a free 1-hour training to sensitize Nigerians and spread awareness on data protection and privacy. The training will be facilitated by our very own Dr. Wentin Woga, the team lead for compliance consulting at DataPro Limited. He has over 20 years of experience as a compliance professional, so you're definitely in good hands. As far as the ground rules go, please send your questions to the chat box or use the Q&A function. And please do not forget to follow us on social media. Doctor, over to you. Please do enjoy your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mickey. And let me join Mickey in welcoming everyone very warmly to today's free webinar training session anchored DataPro Limited. And before I move on, please permit me to just share my screen. Just 1 minute. Okay. I hope you can see it. Okay. Yeah, once again, welcome to today's training. And it is a DataPro initiative and, of course, a free webinar to mark the commemoration of Data Privacy Day, which is a global celebration, a day, of course, earmarked to remember the importance of data. And this is christened the outlook for data protection and compliance in 2023. Before I also proceed, let me also acknowledge the presence of some of my colleagues who are here present. Ms. Tomiwa Ademoloye is here with us, along with Ms. Ademiku Adishoyoju, who just introduced me. And we also have Mr. Roland Aluka, as well as Mr. Mayowa Oyelo. We are all here to serve you and, of course, make this journey a pleasurable and enjoyable one. Yeah, Data Privacy Day is very, very key. And of course, it is important. And that is why DataPro is identifying with this particular event globally, having also in Nigeria been, of course, introduced by the regulator, the Nigeria Data Protection Bureau, which of course kickstarted it on the 28th of January with some events. And today, DataPro is joining all stakeholders across the world to mark this. And DataPro has come a long way, over 28 years of parallel service, having been described as a leading and of course most experienced compliance and corporate governance, as well as fraud risk management consulting firm in Nigeria, with footprints spread across West Africa and some other parts of the globe. They have offered services in the range of data protection and compliance consulting, business information consultations, as well as credit rating agency of repute. They are also very deep in compliance consulting and training. As a matter of fact, they're a pioneer in Nigeria. They are also into recovery services and forensic accounting, as well as know your employee verification services and third-party verification on politically exposed persons, as well as corporate affairs commission verifications and BVN, all leveraging API. You can do well, of course, to reach us on the website www.datapro.nigeria.com, or you can share your thoughts or reach us directly on mail for your inquiries and clarifications on info@datapro.nigeria.net. Okay, this is the way we're going to run for this 1 hour. We intend to take a look at a conceptual framework, of course, looking at the importance of data. We will also take a look at the evolution and significance with respect to Data Privacy Day. We will also be discussing the imperatives of data protection and privacy. Thereafter, we take a look at some, of course, unintended, unwanted, but some disturbing issues around sanctions, penalties, fines with respect to data breaches, data abuse, and data misuse. We will also be discussing data security and some mitigations. How do we protect ourselves? How do we save ourselves from the myriad of problems that are leading within the cyberspace? We will also be discussing data protection compliance outlook for 2023, which we have just started, and beyond. And thereafter, we'll be concluding. Just like as my colleague Miki said earlier, please do make generous use of the chat box and the Q&A. And of course, we will be attending to them at the end. It will be consolidated and we'll respond to your questions, to your concerns, and of course, to every comment you have made. We will take a look at them and respond accordingly. So, Data Privacy Day was thought of so many years ago. And what is the primary focus? To bring to the front burner the importance of data, to ensure that globally that data is respected, data is safeguarded, and of course, to engender and enable trust, which will build confidence amongst all the stakeholders. Today is no longer news that data has become a very important item. And that is why it has been referred to by different people from different perspectives. Data, of course, represents the facts, it represents figures, it can also represent information when processed. And of course, all these are about a person or a thing. And why are they captured? Why are they used? To be able to take decisions. And of course, how effective and efficient those decisions become will depend on the quality of data and of course, the handling. And that is why, by extension, you can see sometimes data becomes, applied in very wrong manner. It could either be used legitimately or illegitimately, but whichever way, the intended purpose is for it to be used legitimately. But the bad actors, most of the time, may go off their way and begin to abuse data, misuse data, or even breach data. It is, of course, referred to today as the global gold. People are now looking very close, and that is why even nations have started designating and, of course, paying close attention to data and be creating the digital economy. The digital economy runs on data, facilitated by technology. Therefore, the people have seen data as that item that is going to replace oil, that is going to replace gold. And of course, if you look around, you can see that the latest of the billionaires today are all products of technology, and technology is driven by data. However, the bad actors, the cyber criminals, are always troubling this particular space, stealing data and even sometimes selling them to the darknet, the dark internet, which is a place for all these criminals. Here, they are also, of course, trading their stock. However, the bad actors cannot be allowed to continue to grow in this, their nefarious activity. And that is also one of the reasons why even the government now has a role and is also playing that role through regulations and, of course, some guidance. So many things constitute data and personal data for that matter. And of course, that is also one of the reasons why the NDPR, the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation, describes and defines personal data as an information that relates to an identified or an identifiable natural person, who we generally refer to as the data subject. And as a matter of fact, the data owner which could be you or me. And there are so many components of personal data, all the way from demographic information, such as name. It could also be address or age, date of birth, or even place of birth. It could extend to those identification information items, such as your IDs within ID numbers, like your name, your national identification number. It could be your passport photograph. It could be your passport number. It could be any of those items, a unique identifier. You could also have them in form of communication data, such as your email addresses or your IP or cookies data, as well as the RFID tags. You could also extend to footages from the CCTV, as well as call recordings, photographs, signature, and fingerprints. It could also extend to your impressions on social media, your likes, your comments, your share, your opinion. And that is why today we need to be careful. Opinions we represent or express, or things we like and do on the social media, from Facebook to LinkedIn to Twitter, they are all our personal data. And of course, little wonder, so many embassies today are now referencing our activities on the social media as part of the consideration to either grant visas or renew visas. Because where such opinions are extreme, they can also be tied to us as a person or be tied to our organizations we represent as norm or culture or even the values. So we need to look at all that and then be mindful of some of the things we do. And currently, of course, the world is increasingly being driven by technology. So it's technology enabled, it's technology powered. And what is technology running on? Without data, it will be difficult for technology to run. Therefore, data becomes the ingredient that propels technology. So, and by so doing, it is so important. And that is also one of the reasons why individuals increasingly also are beginning to latch onto this. Our lives today are practically being defined by technology. Today, it's difficult for you to leave your house without your phone. It's difficult for you to even stay 1 hour, 2 hours without touching the phone. And so many years ago, around 1999, someone predicted that technology, particularly smartphones, may begin to redefine and determine the way we live our lives. Even as a matter of fact, spending more time on phones than we spend for other productive activities. But yet, it is also providing services. A whole lot of things today are done on the phone. So it is now very difficult for anyone to extricate him or herself, to even say, you don't want to get involved. All of us are now immersed on the technology because of the services we are also getting. And then as we do, our data is also surrendered. So technology thrives through those basic, data we provide, which of course forms the ingredient. However, personally identifiable information remains key. And as it remains key, it also gets endangered, especially they are considered sensitive and high-risk items. Because what are the cyber criminals looking out for? Most of the time, they're looking for personally identifiable information. They're looking for data. And it is the same data they use to unleash all manners of mayhem and cause problems within institutions, corporate bodies, of course, used to destabilize lives of persons and take away money. A lot of money has been lost through cyber attacks. Therefore, how many of us today are aware of some of the things we need to do, and that even our data is collected almost every now and then? And of course, as this data, they are collected, most of the collectors and of course the data controllers, as we refer to them, process them and use them for different purposes. So how are we going to understand the manner data is collected, the way manner is used, and it is even stored or disposed of. However, this is a call for collective responsibility because it is in the ecosystem, everybody is involved. Within the data protection and privacy ecosystem, you have the government. Government has its own role to provide the regulations and guidelines along with the regulators, as well as data subjects that is at the heart of it all, which is you and me, those of us that our data will be required. What role do we have to play? First and foremost, we even need to understand the need for us to protect our data and know that we have some rights. Data controller and or processor, they also have a role. They collect this data, process it, and use it for certain purposes. Do we understand the purpose? Do we follow through? Do we even know our rights? Those are some of the things we intend to bring to the fore at this training. But in all, it's all about compliance. Compliance, of course, has to do with our ability to manage regulatory and statutory risks. Because in everything we do, it is guided, particularly data protection and privacy, it is regulated. Do we understand our role? Do we know the risks? How are we managing these risks? Compliance helps us to do that individually and collectively, as well as at the corporate level. Our ability to act in line with the letter and the spirit of the law, law and regulations, to ensure that we understand even the standards, the codes, the conventions, and playing it to the rule, internalizing them because they are externally driven, but meant to protect us and protect everybody as well as the corporate entity. We need to know our role to be able to do it right every now and then and always. Because once we get it wrong, we get endangered. Of course, the vulnerability will be exploited. And once it is exploited, there will be losses. Some people have sat in their rooms, in their offices, or on their way, and they are receiving alerts of their money leaving the accounts. Some of them are the ones that have even cost it because they compromised the security that, of course, they are supposed to guide. So how do we understand those security? How do we guard them? And of course, that is the extent to which data protection and the data privacy tries to expose us to make sure that we are safe at all times and secure. So data protection brings about that security, ensures that unauthorized persons do not have access to our systems, to our personal data. And we must know how to ward off and keep away all these threats. Data privacy now brings to the fore that as data subjects, we are the owner of our data. Therefore, we must have a measure of control on how it is collected and how it is used. And that is also one of the reasons why even the Constitution of Nigeria, 1999, as amended, also provides for this very important right, which is on privacy rights, section 37 to be precise. And we will be looking at a whole lot of things, especially with respect to the limitation. On all these, we can also talk about the data lake and the data warehouse. Data is collected by corporate entities, and of course, they are stored in different ways. Of course, holding the repository. So depending on the manner of storage and collection and the nature of data, that will determine whether it's going to be referred as data lake or data warehouse. But whichever way, there are several systems that help in the collection of data. First is the customer relationship management module, which of course is like a module that most organizations have, and of course some integrated to their core, institution application. Some have it as a standalone, where all data, the data of customers, clients, consumers, and of course service providers and people you deal with, you collect. And then sometimes when it comes in that way, most of the time they are structured, because you can have data that is structured, semi-structured, and even unstructured. And that is what, of course, the data lake does for you, where, of course, data is raw, not structured, because today data comes from various sources. Can you also collect it through ERP, enterprise resource planning applications, or through human resource application, or even generally, as it happens within the financial system, through the financial applications, their core applications through which they host, data they collect. But data can also come from public domain, from social media. For instance, a lot of data generated public domain and all that, they are not structured, they come in different manners. Some come in pictures, in images, some are captured in all manners, for instance, like name. In structured data, environments, you might have name captured in a way. You have, first of all, title, followed by first name, next is middle name, last is surname. But in an unstructured environment, you can have everything commingled. Some will put their surname first, some will put the middle name, some will put even a pseudonym. People will put in anything they like. On the title, people can choose to even bring their traditional titles into it and all that, not following all those laid down. So for such kind of data, most of the time, data lake will help to handle all those. But for data warehouse, those are structured kind of data for particular analytics purposes, especially where they are big data. Yes, we can also relate with recent developments, of course, according to the Minister of Communication, Professor Issa Pantani, of course, pointed out in the course of the commemoration of this year's Data Privacy Day, and of course, was able to bring to the fore the achievement of the Nigerian Data Protection Bureau, which came into being February 2022, last year. That particular market has been grown to about 5.5 billion and is still rising and has been providing a lot of jobs. What it means is that the future for digital economy is very bright. And of course, the work of a regulator like NDPB is required. Of course, it is it came out of NITDA, that's NITDA, which is the National Information Technology Development Agency, which was the pioneer regulator until February last year, when, of course, the NDPB, Nigeria Data Protection Bureau, took over, headed by Dr. Vincent Olatunji. It is also important to understand how this came about. Some years ago, precisely about 2006, the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe considered it wise to set a day aside and come up with the Data Privacy Day or Data Protection Day. And from that time until now, this has been celebrated all year round. And Nigeria happens to be the first in Africa to join the Committee of Nations in the commemoration of this particular very important day. And so, irrespective of the fact that there are still bad actors who collect data and use them for illegitimate purposes, but I can tell you a huge number still do it legitimately. And so we need to ramp up the consciousness and continue to enlighten people to understand the importance of data and how to protect themselves. And of course, government has also been playing its own role by coming up with regulations and also planning to strengthen with, of course, there is a pending bill, which of course has been, of course, the minister also pointed to it, Professor Issa Pantani pointed to it, that it has already been approved by the FEC, and they are packaging it to make that presentation to the National Assembly for consideration. Data protection is very key, and a day set aside to commemorate Data Privacy Day also serves as a reminder to bring to our consciousness the need for us to continue to abide by the tenets of data protection. And of course, it is, for us to be able to protect ourselves, for us to be able to safeguard ourselves from the activities of these criminals who are engaging in nefarious activities. There is a very thin divide between our offline life and our online life. In other words, the whole thing is almost closed up. We have all migrated now to the information superhighway, the digital platforms, the cyberspace. And as we are migrating, we are also witnessing that it's not only the good people are migrating, the bad people are also following, and also the ugly. So the good, the bad, and the ugly, everyone moving, simultaneously to the cloud, to the digital space, to the cyber environment. What it means, incidentally, is that as the bad people are joining, they are bringing risks onto us. And we need to get to know how to protect ourselves. So transformation is happening and the digital world is here. And that is also one of the reasons why, if you look at the cashless policy that is coming, is also, an intention to move everything to the digital, space. Therefore, a day like this brings about a lot of consciousness, awareness, and knowledge on the very important thing to do about our data, which has to do with protection. And it also helps us to know that at all times we must remain security conscious about our data. In the coming years, beginning from this year, this is like a chart that shows when this important day will fall. And of course, the intention is to also help us block our calendar preparatory to all these celebrations, a day worthy of celebration, a day worthy of our participation. And little wonder why DataPro, the best setter, and of course the technology-driven company that has considered it right to, of course, join the rest of the world and of course the stakeholders, including the government and the regulator in Nigeria, to commemorate this day and of course impact this knowledge and bring value to everyone. Data protection is key. Of course, they need to safeguard the rights and freedom of every Nigerian, which we indicated at the beginning is also provided for in the Constitution. And of course, there is need to protect and also secure organizational and personal data from, and of course, the activities of the bad actors against leakages, theft, misuse, and breaches. There is also need for us to know that there is also a thin divide between consumer protection and data protection. As a matter of fact, both are intertwined. And the government of any nation, including that of Nigeria, is very particular about protection of its citizens and, of course, their privacy rights. We also need to understand in the season we are now, which is the season of electioneering campaign, the political, season, elections is almost coming, and aspirants are moving around. Tendency that data will be breached, personal data of people will be breached because unsolicited messages are also going to be sent. Some of us sit down and you are receiving message from certain people, certain bodies, certain groups. You don't even know who they are. The question is, how did they get your data? So with this consciousness coming, such illegal use of personal data, either for political reasons or marketing calls, or even for sales purposes, will be forbidden, except they have your consent. Therefore, we need to also avoid criminal and civil prosecution, either for ourselves or employees or directors of our organizations. There is need to understand that privacy today is becoming a major selling point. It has become such an important thing that even in the global arena, it is bringing about global competitiveness. Therefore, we need to engender and endear ourselves to our stakeholders to let them, of course, particularly the customers, to build their confidence, to also understand that their data remains safe with us and will not be sold, will not be abused, misused, or even used in a manner that was not agreed. We then also need to understand that there are sanctions and penalties. And one of the things to do, and which this type of engagement will do for us, is to let us understand that where things are not done properly, we can expose ourselves to regulatory compliance risks, which will bring about penalties, fines, and sanctions. And when we get there, we're going to see how so many global companies, institutions have suffered, including those in Nigeria, have also suffered some of these penalties along the line. Talking about some of the principles on the governance, there are about 7 of them in number, from the lawfulness, fairness, and transparency, which speaks about our ability to ensure that whatever thing we are doing, we must do them lawfully. We must make sure we have clarity, we are open, we are transparent, no hidden agenda. Whenever we are collecting data after consent, we must play it by the rule. We must collect data only for the purpose for which it is meant. Probably if you are into financial services or insurance or telecommunication, data you are collecting is for that primary purpose, to render service to the subscriber, to render service to the customer in insurance or customer in the bank, or any other service that you have agreed you are going to render. It's not supposed to be sold for any other purpose other than that for which it was meant. Data minimization deals with the situation where you are not supposed to collect unending data. No, data to be collected must be just enough to serve the purpose for which you are rendering service. Therefore, if you are in insurance, you are not supposed to be collecting data meant for sports, probably to find out whether the customer you are dealing with is the supporter of Man U, or a supporter of Man City, or a supporter of Arsenal or Liverpool. It is out of the realm of service. Accuracy means at all times, your data must be updated. Data you are using must be updated. It shouldn't be obsolete. And then your storage limitation immediately after consummation of the service or transaction, data is supposed to be purged. You don't store data longer than necessary. However, we put always a caveat here that without prejudice to extant laws and regulations. In other words, you might be in an organization or in a service that requires you to keep data for a longer period. Like, for instance, assuming you are in financial services, the law, which has just recently been amended, the Money Laundering Prevention and Prohibition Act 2022, requires that even upon cessation or separation or closure of accounts, you still need to hold data at least 5 years. But however, because most of the issues that also come, even with those financial data, sometimes some of them might be criminal matters, which are not time-barred. In other words, when there is an issue, the law enforcement agencies will be requiring the data from inception till date. They won't even ask you whether you have closed the account or whether you have purged the data. Therefore, purging the data, especially if it's a sensitive matter, might be misconstrued for collusion or any other thing. So most of the time, our professional guidance and support to especially financial institutions is to keep data in perpetuity. And the good thing today, we talk about cloud. Cloud helps you to hold any volume of data, and of course you can hold as long as you like, and even at a cheaper rate. So you also have integrity and confidentiality. Actually supposed to be 3. In information and cybersecurity, we refer to them as the primary principles. CIA, which is C representing confidentiality, I representing integrity, and A representing availability. Under the confidentiality, there we want to be sure that you are setting up your system and creating users based on authorization and permissions, right permissions to do their jobs. In other words, unlawful persons may not be able to gain access. However, if after creation, you limit their functions or their activities within the system, so you might come into a system, you can only impute data, you may not be able to authorize data. You may not be able to delete data. You might not be able to create tables. Let's assume you want to expand, the partitions and all that. You might not have that privilege, all right, which of course will be reserved for the database administrators. By so doing, you are of course securing the system as well. On availability, you are trying to ensure that system is up and running 24 hours of the day, 7 days of the week. And that is why if you go to most system environments, particularly if you look at the ATM galleries of banks, even whether they are working or they're not even working, you always see them inscribed there, 24/7. What they are trying to preach for you is availability principle. Those are required to be able to build up your governance structure. And then you have accountability. It's the last, but it's not the least. As a matter of fact, it's one of the most important, and it crisscrosses all other principles. And it's built on two sub-pillars. First is the responsibility for compliance, and second is the demonstration of compliance. In the responsibility for compliance, the board, the management play a major role because they must ensure they have the right systems structure, the right documentations, and have put the right strategy and people to be able to comply with the required legislations and regulation within that industry. And when they have done that, including training, because it's also about knowledge, that they have done all those, provided for all those, to make sure that they have equipped the people correctly with the right tools, with the right implements. The next thing that is on the people. Demonstration of compliance will be on the people. Because if you have been given the right implements and tools, then you must deliver the goods. So, and delivering the goods must be evidence-based. It must be based on proof. If you have been taught what to do, and you say you are doing it, and the thing is still failing, then you must show us how you have been doing it. If there are records you must keep, you must show us the records you kept. For instance, if it's in an audit, you must show us your work papers to show us the extent of work you have done, so that we will be able to validate whether you are doing the right things or the wrong things. And that is what will safeguard the institution. If the last one is not fulfilled, then all other principles will collapse. That means the board will be held responsible, the management will be held liable, as well as the staff will be responsible for whatever their actions or inactions have caused. And that liability rests on all of them. And in resting on them, they will, of course, the company or the institution will be punished, sanctioned appropriately, and the individuals will also be separated. In other words, to remove the veil and know who are those behind this company that didn't do the right things. They will also be sanctioned. Okay? And of course, for the lawful basis, these are the conditions on which the lawful basis will be fulfilled. First is consent. Consent is very clear and simple and straightforward. That means you as a data subject, you have accepted that your data can be collected and used. For instance, you want to open an account. You have filled the form, you have given all details. What it means, you have consented. Same thing with maybe an insurance company, a telecom company, or even a service-based company. You have agreed and all that. And then most times now, they give you this consent point and they tell you to also sign it. Or it could be for legitimate interest, where you are serving the interest, and of course, so sometimes there might be some people, especially the vulnerable, you need to protect, maybe the children, whom you also have to get consent from their parents or guide them. It could also be for public interest, especially for law enforcement, criminal investigations. You don't need to come and begin to talk to the person. Let's say, for instance, that's one of the reasons why in banks, once the law enforcement rights banks or rights insurance or any of these organizations, and they need details and supporting documents, the bank is not going to get back to the customer. One, the law enforcement has written supported by law, court order, and secondly, is also in fulfillment of their primary responsibility to safeguard everybody. So it is in public interest that that should be done. It could be for contractual, necessity. Probably you are doing an APG, an advance payment guarantee, or other related transactions. Of course, at that point, it is in the interest of the parties to make sure that the job goes. It could also be for legal obligations. For instance, those who are into services, okay, especially the financial services, insurance companies, banks, and the supporting institutions that are reporting entities, they are duty bound to conduct what we call due diligence, and by extension, KYC, know your customer. You can't do it without data. So by, on lawful basis, they are also duty bound to go ahead and collect data and use for that purpose. You can also have vital interest. There could be situations of life and death, especially where somebody is unconscious. Maybe somebody comes to your premises and has an industrial accident, or there is something that is threatening somebody's life. And that's not the time to say, no, you must give consent. You must. Then we have learned that you can't collect data, you can't proceed without the person consenting, just like what some medical doctors, I think that thing has stopped now, okay? If someone is in critical condition, they will always wait until a member of the family calls, especially women who want to put to bed, until either the husband or somebody comes to sign before they will conduct, a CS and all that. But in the process, some people have lost their lives. So the question is it right? But generally, the primary thing to do is to save life. Every other thing can be settled. And that's why even overseas, and I think it's beginning to happen in Nigeria now, even if you catch a criminal and the criminal has a bullet wound, first thing to do is to even treat the criminal, maybe an armed robber, save his life so that he can be used for investigation. But before now, I think what used to happen is that police, or whatever, permission will be required. Okay, you're asking for permission from police, but sometimes that thing cannot come. And if the criminal dies, then the information, the facts that could have been gotten from him or her to prosecute the matter will die with him or her. And that creates more problems. That's why overseas, particularly in the developed world, they will always treat criminals nicely, get there, because their intention is to make sure that they nip that particular crime in the bud by getting all the information they need. Data subject has loss and loss of rights, and that is one of the takeaways for you in this training. The rights, beginning from the right to information. You have the right to know. You have the right to be informed. How is your data collected? And is it for what purpose? And how is it held? You have the right to access that data, to ask them, what data do you have on me? You have the right to rectification. And that means you can update. Peradventure, where you live, you have changed accommodation. You can ask them to change your address. Or you have changed your phone number. You can ask the service provider to change your phone number. This is your new phone number. It's also in their interest to have your current and updated data. There is also a right to withdraw consent. The same way you give consent freely, consent should also be withdrawn freely. But unfortunately, in some sites and applications, as they're coming, even sometimes you may not know when you have given consent, because they go and position the button usually very close to where you are going to scroll, and as you're trying to scroll, you might not know when you have clicked and the thing goes. Now you want to come out, you don't want that service. They will not direct you to several pages. Consent that it was on the landing page. Now, for you to withdraw the consent, they go and hide it maybe 3, 4, 5 pages at the back. And sometimes it will be very difficult for you to withdraw. And that is wrong. Consent is supposed to be withdrawn freely when you wish. You don't want service anymore. Automated decision-making, you might object if you don't want. That's why sometimes some people tell you they don't want certain processing to be done on their data, right? To be forgotten. You can ask for it. That is, you want to close the relationship. You want to close the account. You don't want to continue with that transaction, with that activity. Say, please close. You have the right to seek for it and ask for it. If it's not done, you can seek redress, right? For data portability, yes, you can move your data from one point to the other. You can exchange it, you can transfer it. That's also one of the reasons why you can seek for reference and it can move, either school reference or company reference or any reference or employee reference and all that. It can move because you have given consent and you want it, and it's your right to ask for your data to be moved. You can also object to any form of processing, even if it's not automated. You can impose a restriction. That's okay. I don't want you to do more of it. These are all rights that you have, which you can, of course, ask for, and you will get them. Remember, we spoke about all these rights, but there is limitation. They said to every rule, there is an exception. Nothing in life is absolute. Even life itself is not absolute, because sometimes if somebody will have to leave here and move to another, level, some say is a higher level, but we will all go one day. So no right is permanent or absolute or unlimited. Where you are right, your own right stops, other people's own right begins. You don't have to say, okay, because you have right, therefore you go and constitute a problem to all others. That's why even the noise pollution that is happening in our cities is wrong. You're not supposed to be blasting music maybe in a public gathering and it's disturbing neighborhood and other people live. Go overseas, it cannot happen. People will take you to court. Because it's a disturbance. If you want to enjoy yourself, you like those kind of live music, you rent an enclosed hall, an environment, blast the music the way you want. If you want to dance, you dance. If you want to listen to it, listen, and that's it. Or if you have vehicles that are, using some kind of fumes and causing a lot of health hazard, those things is wrong. Therefore, on privacy rights, once it has something to do with public interest, if it goes against public interest, then your right stops at that moment. These rights provided on section 37 of the Constitution is also limited by subsections within 37 and sections 38, 39, 40, and 41. And of course, once it has to do with interest of defense, which concerns everybody. Defense concerns everybody. You can't say because you are asking for privacy right there, for nobody can tamper with your privacy when it is affecting public defense and security. No. National security, one person's privacy right cannot override everybody's rights in terms of defense, in terms of security, in terms of safety, in terms of public order, in terms of public morality, even public health. And that's why even to the GDPR, which is a piece of legislation that has been released out of European Union, and of course is seen all over the world as a landmark piece of regulation that is referenced by many countries in the globe, including Nigeria. In their Article 2, they also recognize this fact, which is also observed in Nigeria. Assuming there is a criminal investigation or any activity by the law enforcement agencies aimed at prevention, detection, or prosecution of crime, you cannot come and claim privacy rights or claim that you have this right, you have this right. No, the investigation must go on, and then prosecution must take place. It's only at the end where you are vindicated and you are released and all. That is the only time that will stop. That people will not investigate you, then that's not right. I think it's only in the case of one person, an ex-governor, that I saw so many years ago that went and got a perpetual injunction not to be investigated, not to be prosecuted, not to be tried. And we understand a court granted that order. And we are asking, is it right to do? No, it is not right to do. Nobody is above the law. The only thing is that you must have your fair hearing, you must have justice. If you are not found guilty, you will be acquitted. But that you will not be investigated even when there are things pointing to you is also not right. And what are some of the imperatives? First and foremost, we must ensure. Please keep the comments and questions coming. We will take all of them at the back, towards the end, so that we'll be able to cover this within the time limit. All right. So keep them coming. So first and foremost, you need to ensure that all personal data, is processed lawfully. Remember, we have spoken about that principle on governance, talking about lawfulness, talking about fairness, talking about transparency. Then you must collect only personal data that is absolutely necessary. Don't collect anything. Look at the data minimization, only what is necessary. You store the personal data for only a reasonable time. Once you have satisfied the purpose, once you have delivered the service. Why are you, for instance, you go to some organizations, especially human resources departments, they want to employ 5 people, they advertise, or they want to employ 10 people, they advertise. After the advertisement, they will receive over 1,000 applications. Then they will go through the recruitment process, take the 10. If you have received 1,000 applications, that means 990 were not, successful. So how are you, managing that? Because these people have submitted their CVs, filled sometimes online application forms. So you have collected their personal data, sensitive data for that matter. What we hear most of the time is that they are building a data bank so that when they need to employ people in future, they may not need to advertise again. Yeah, it's up to the company to take a decision how they want it. But in the process of holding that data, if it is compromised, then the organization becomes liable. There is also an issue that happens in many companies today, which I say. You go to many companies today, they are operating in manual register, especially visitors register. A will come and sign number 1, B will come sign number 2, and you are collecting name, address, some are collecting phone number, collecting email. Some people have been defrauded by copying other people's numbers and use it to hack, using it to, get to certain layers of data. What it means is that if for any reason the matter is reported, investigated, and it is found that that is the manner which you are operating and managing your data, then the organization will be found wanting and can, of course, go to, receive huge penalties and sanctions. So we need to be very careful. The writing based on the guidance and recommendation of the regulator is for us to digitize our visitors register. So the information is not available to any third party, any other person. It's only available to those who need to know, or need to have, or need to do. We need to report all breaches. Once we notice a breach, we report. And then we create and use adequate and strong password. This is no longer, a new thing. So it's a no-brainer. We must ensure that the kind of password we have is adequate, is strong, has satisfied the appropriate string in terms of alphanumeric and special characters. And it should be, changed from time to time. So of course, the password management protocol should enforce that change from time to time. And we shouldn't use the same. Of course, most password, utilities will not allow you. Okay, you need to protect your financial information. Unfortunately, today, I see people who share their ATM pins. Particularly, you see some men, they will send their driver with their ATM to go and buy fuel, especially this period of fuel scarcity. So, boy, go and buy the fuel. I'm going for a meeting in the next 2 hours. This guy, I don't know the pin. It's, are you new with me? The pin is 2222. Go quick. Only buy 10,000 or 20,000. They withdraw, help me withdraw another 10,000. These are enlightened people, and they have been told repeatedly not to share, but yes, they go ahead and share. Some women do share their pins with their housemates, especially during weekends, or maybe when they are very busy in the office. They say, come and take this my ATM, go and buy your buy chicken, buy fish, buy only 20,000. Do quick, this I had. Madam, I don't know your pin. Oh, my pin. You'll be a load. Have you not worked with me for how many years now? Oh yeah, my pin is 1111. Do quick and bring my ATM. what have you done? You have already compromised yourself, compromised your financial transactions. And that's one of the reasons why most of the time the banks will go and look and check. Once they find out that there's a compromise, no matter how you complain from that to tomorrow, they will not refund. They will believe that there is probably a collusion or a compromise or negligence. Okay? You must be able to look at phishing issues, smishing, social engineering. Of course, you don't, when attacks come, they come in various ways. You are seeing links, especially today where people are posting and reposting things, even without considering whether it's right or wrong. Some will say forwarded and received. Why are you forwarding something as received without confirming? Some items that are being shared and forwarded, even on the face of it, they are false, completely fake. And said, yes, we are still sharing. So if probably you have a malware or a ransomware, or you have a virus that is attached to some of the things you are sharing, that is the same way you are going to compromise your system. You must be very careful how you open those links, how you open those attachments. And then, of course, we must be security conscious and protect our personal data and make sure we are wary of, most public Wi-Fi. Some people are always looking for free Wi-Fi. They say, oh yeah, this thing is full, the full network, let me use it quickly. How on earth can you be using every Wi-Fi you see? That is very dangerous. So you need to update your operating systems and software. You need to also update your privacy preferences, especially on the apps and on your devices. You reset your home network router, update account passwords, shred rather than tear. Today, there are people we call the dumpster divers. They are interested in going to the refuse bins. They pretend to be scavengers. But what are they looking for? They're looking for sensitive data. You think you have torn your paper and thrown it to the waste bin and it is thrown away, or you think you have folded the paper is a waste. Most of the papers you are folding and throwing away contain very sensitive and important data. Sometimes people ask, how are they even getting this thing? We are the ones opening ourselves. You need to, of course, ensure that networks you use are secure, and most of the time, your personal information, you can also hold some of them offline, and then set up a 2FA, a two-factor authentication. Sometimes by extension, a three-factor authentication. What is a two-factor authentication? A combination of what you know and what you have. What do you know? You know your password, you know your PIN. And then what do you have? You have a token, all right? Sometimes an OTP can also be used, right? But the token can either be a hard token or a soft token. So a combination of these two will, of course, enable you to be able to, strengthen your security. But the higher you move, depending on how sensitive data is, you can introduce the third authentication protocol. They're making it a 3FA, a three-factor authentication. And what are you adding? You are adding who you are in form of your natural attributes. And natural attributes will then come either in form of your retina or iris, or come in form of your voice recognition or facial recognition. Just like I'm speaking to you, the system will be able to decipher whether I'm the true person or not, or your thumbprints or fingerprints. Some will do 10 fingers. When America started doing 10 fingers, people are shouting, no, why are they collecting? Some are even doing thoracic, features. You go, just like you want to do X-ray, you hug and the things, text all those images. They say this America want to kill someone. Why are they taking everything? But it is important because they are seeing what they are trying to do as sensitive. The hammer, will it fall? Yes, the hammer can fall when we don't do the right things. So we need to always do the right things, okay? So that we can avoid these consequences. Yeah, globally, there have been some, challenges, some issues, some fines. Yes, even the big names have also received hammer. It is on record that over 900 companies have, of course, come, into this threat. From 2018, that's from the beginning of the GDPR, and even our own time here, 2019, some also have joined this particular race, okay? And of course, the likes of Google, Facebook, WhatsApp, Amazon, and a whole lot of them we're going to see. You come to Nigeria, have even the Lagos State, Board of Inland Revenue, having also been fined as well as the Electronic Settlement Limited, and a host of others. If you look at this, you can see the question sometimes I ask, can any company in Nigeria be fined $877 million and the company will still survive? Look at the reasons for the fines. These are data protection and privacy related matters. In this case of Amazon, is that there was a wrong collection and sharing of personal data via cookies. Cookies we see every now and then as you log on to most of these applications. Without consent, they collected it and they shared, and they were fined $877 million. Look at that on WhatsApp. WhatsApp we're all using. I don't think there's anybody now who's not using WhatsApp. They were fined $255 million. Why? Failure to explain its legal basis for certain data processing. Remember, we spoke about legal basis, which is under the lawfulness principle. They could not explain it. They were just collecting data. And they had to cough out this amount. Look at Google for wrong implementation of cookie consent procedures on YouTube. Facebook again also suffered 68 million. Google again suffered 68 million as well. And then another 56.6 million for improper privacy notice. H&M also suffered, Team suffered, NL Energia, British Airways coughed out $26 million. Why? They compromised the data of their customers, of course, passengers, the air travelers, and then hackers made mixed meat of it, took away the login details, payment card information. You remember, most of the time you book online, you pay. So they compromised, and then incidentally, the payment information was also compromised. Marriott, the hospitality giant, also suffered $23.8 million. Why? Clients, the guests that were going into their facilities, they had their data compromised. The guest names, their addresses, the passport numbers, of course, the payment card information, all exposed. On and on like that. Even the Meta, the holding company of Facebook, also suffered in Ireland, 18.2 million. Clearview suffered 20.5 million. Wind suffered. Vodafone suffered also, as well as Google again. Okay, the Kaiser Bank also suffered 7.2. Okay, they did not establish a legal basis. And then let me see, there was one that suffered because it was monitoring so much, the details of their staff, and that was a problem. And that was a problem because you must get their consent to be able to do all that. Yes, because without it, then your actions will be considered ultra-virus, and then you will suffer. Yes, that was H&M. H&M, for improper monitoring of several hundred employees, they were fined $41 million. Okay? Also the BBVA, the Fastweb, the Dutch Tax and Customs Administration, it doesn't even spell government establishments, all right? Any Gas Eluce in Italy, the Capio, the Irene, as well as the Lagos State Inland Revenue Service. Why? They came up with a portal to improve the experience of the taxpayers, but unfortunately, it was porous. Porous to the extent that all you need to get information from the portal is to know the person's first name and surname, and you put it there, everything will open up for you. The person's first name, second name, surname, the person's phone number, the person's address, the tax he has paid, the income the person earned, which is the taxable income on which the tax is based, how many times the person, all those things, including email address and all that. And of course, the regulator found it very disturbing. Although they worked amicably with the government, we were able to settle it and then improved it upon, but they still had to fine them 1 million naira. Same thing with the electronic settlement. They also breached, compromised data of their customers. And of course, it was also reviewed and found wanting, and need that. Then the regulator also fine them 5 million and also put some other conditions on them that they have to be monitored. Because part of the thing they also found out that because the regulation requires that there must be constant training of all staff. They found out they were not training. They only trained a few and left. And this was found to be the reason why there was not that yawning gap, why that vulnerability was created. Because sometimes ignorance is the reason for most of all these cyber attacks. Now, it is important we recognize the fact that the penalty is huge to the extent that, look, for corporate entities, once you are processing 10,000, data subjects data, if you compromise data breach or abuse data, it is 2% of your annual gross revenue. For big organizations, it's going to run into billions, even though they say or a sum of 10 million, but they're saying whichever is greater. But I can tell you, 2% of turnover, gross turnover, is always higher for big companies, especially service-based organizations like banks. If you are processing less than 1,000, less than 10,000, then you pay 1%. I can also tell you this 1% can go in, 1% of 1 billion is 1 billion. Some banks post profit of 2 billion, 200 billion. So 1% of 200 billion is 2 billion. And somebody's just paying for not getting consent or for not processing, on lawful basis. Okay? Data cycle goes in this manner. Well, what this brings to our knowledge is that as data flows like this, from the point you collect it or capture it, just mere exchange of telephone or address at the office and all that, you have already started that data process and the cycle has started. With that cycle, at every point, will be it a collection, assessment, usage, view, access, storage, transmission, sharing, copying, or even updating, risk is already attached. Therefore, what type of risk management framework have you inculcated, have you built in to help your system? And there are several cyber threats, from malware to phishing to Trojan horses to DDoS, spyware, and all the rest of them. All we need is to ensure our systems are secure and we have the right knowledge. We need to be mindful of the vulnerabilities. They do exist. And these vulnerabilities are the things that, of course, the criminals, the cyber criminals are looking out for, where there are software bugs, system bugs, broken processes, ineffective controls, hardware flaws, and on like that, outdated systems, up to human error, lack of knowledge. That's lack of knowledge in people. That's what, in this age and time, some people are still responding to requests to send PIN. Somebody is writing to you, I'm writing to you now from back. Sometimes some of them will call. I'm calling you now from so bank. I'm the customer, service manager. We are about to, update your record, but we found out that are not correct. Please, can you send in your PIN, send in your this, send in, and somebody will go ahead and send. Such sensitive and very, very delicate data you send, that a bank that is calling you does not have the information already with them. The only thing they will not have is your PIN. Every other thing these people are asking, they have it. And the PIN, you cannot even share it with your wife or your husband. Neither can you even share with anybody. And then you are sharing with a third party. What is it doing? Highest you can do, such calls come, go to the nearest branch of that bank and you find out that nobody's calling you anything. If they want to reach you, they know how to reach you. And of course, they wouldn't even want to call you or reach you for those purposes. And then when these vulnerabilities are exploited, what is going to happen? The risks will crystallize. I hope you can see the risk on the left-hand side from violations, because you are going to then be committing a lot of infractions. And these infractions will, of course, range from the NDPR, the Nigeria Data Protection Regulation provisions. You're not going to comply with them, okay? It will lead to business disruptions. It will also affect you because there will be financial losses. There will be, of course, loss of privacy because data has already been compromised. There will be, of course, the media, the paparazzis of this world. We understand the media love bad news. They will begin to write, especially if it's a sensational news item. maybe a big person, a prominent person, maybe a big company, they'll begin to write, and their reputation will be at stake. The public image, the brand will be destroyed. Loss of confidence will ensue. There might be legal penalties. Some of the victims that have been affected may seek redress to claim damages, and then there will be impaired growth. In some cases, some people have lost their lives because once it has become, a matter of litigation, a dispute, sometimes it gets reported and there's going to be investigation, and it will be going to the law enforcement. Sometimes they will have to invite you. Some days you go for the invitation, you're not going home. And if you don't go home, depending on your health status, some people have underlying illnesses that this kind of trauma, they may not be able to bear. And maybe loss of money has been lost. Millions and billions have been lost. So you are afraid what is going to happen. And of course, that will become an issue. So it leads to loss of damages, financial loss, business loss, costs will spiral, and even investment loss. And this will impact across your stakeholders, business partners, and even internally, it will distort so many things. And of course, you will have issues around the principles I mentioned to you earlier, which we have discussed in terms of confidentiality, integrity, or availability. I think we've discussed all that. And data that has been impacted, and of course, once data is breached, to come in the form of data that has been lost, or data that has been destroyed, or data that has been corrupted or disclosed to unauthorized persons or unlawful persons. And look at the myriad of risks. Risks that can be occasioned in this circumstance can come from management risk. It can also come from cybersecurity risk or privacy risk, as well as enforcement risk. And if you look at this litany of risks, they can be clouded and pull down an organization. All we need is to be mindful of this risk and, of course, have the right protocols. Remember, of course, DataPro has offered this a whole lot of services to organizations within Nigeria and outside Nigeria. We must also look at the threats of the alert, because you have moved to the cyber environment. The hackers are also there, and they come in all manners, introducing logic bombs, doing a whole lot of SQL injections, and bringing in so many malicious, software and ransomware, viruses and worms. And these hackers, some of them, of course, they come in different complexions. The most deadly will be the black hat hackers, and then followed by the gray hat hackers, and you also have the white hat hackers. Of course, these ones are good, because why they are good is that they go, even though they go and learn the trade of the hackers and the criminals, but it is to help protect us. So those are the ones we now classify as the certified ethical hackers, who most times come to help us conduct vulnerability assessment and, of course, penetration tests, which we refer to as pen tests for short. Okay? Reports are required to be filed as a matter of fact, audit first will be conducted and reports will be filed. DataPro has specialized in this area and has done it for several organizations. And that is why we want any organization to contact us. Our contact is there. If you look at the bottom, please take it. You can even begin to engage as the training is going on. Of course, the law requires that it is only the DPCOs. Who are the DPCOs? Which, of course, DataPro is one of the foremost. They are the data protection compliance organizations, duly licensed to render training and also render audits for the data controllers. In other words, no other person or entity is required to render the service except you are a DPCO, which DataPro is and has been supporting organizations for a very long time now, from the inception of this regulation. The roadmap to data protection and privacy begins with a stakeholders awareness. Training is supposed to be done in your organizations for all staff. What we are doing today is an abridged form of that training, which takes place for about 2 full days. But we want to bring you up to speed so that you can also re-engage, so that we can come and give you the full bouquet of training so that you get to know all you are supposed to know. So it begins with that stakeholders awareness, then on to gap analysis, data inventory before the gap analysis, and then you do your implementation plan based on the gaps you have identified. Then you look at the supply chain and processes that are in place to see how you can upscale. And then also the DPO will be appointed before you are doing data supply chain analysis. After appointing the DPO, do your supply chain analysis and processing, and then you move on to looking at how data is shared, transferred, or the portability of data. In other words, you might have subsidiaries, you might have partners even outside of Nigeria, okay, or even service providers. How do you share data with them? And then immediately after that, you look at the accountability processes, which I have also spoken to you about in terms of responsibility and demonstration of compliance. Then you look at the rights of data subjects. Very important. Data subjects have rights, and you must understand what it is so that you will not be exposed, so that you can protect those rights and their data. And then you look at data breach notification. Here, there's usually a 72-hour window, which is called self-reporting. So should anything go wrong, you don't have to wait until a third party be reporting it. You can report it by yourself to the regulator. It helps you to ameliorate. It helps to put you in good stead with the regulator. There are some quick wins you must pay attention to. Some things you must do very quickly if you have not done them, either in your organizations, and then some of the things you need to note. First, you must be able to come up with a policy on data protection. And that policy, of course, should also be guided by a consulting firm like DataPro, and they have done it for so many organizations. You must be able to appoint a data protection officer. You must also be able to conduct training, and regular training, usually at least once or twice every year, because things are changing rapidly. You must also be able to conduct a DPIA, which is Data Protection Impact Assessment, and then also conduct the audit. This audit, like I told you, must be conducted by a DPCO. DataPro is an acclaimed DPCO that is duly licensed by the regulator, first by NITDA, the National Information Technology Development Agency, when they were the regulator, before it was taken over by PB, that is the Nigerian Data Protection Bureau. And then the NDPB has also validated all the licenses. And of course, DataPro has been rendering this service very, very judiciously. And of course, lots of data controllers have approached, and this is being done. They will also be the ones filing the report, and it is filed once annually. So they will do it and then file to make sure you are not in default. There are also some things you must do. First is the report I told you of. Should anything go wrong, you must take that step. Within 72 hours of it coming to your knowledge, report it to the regulator, and then you can take it off from there. Then you must inform, look at who are those impacted, the victims, bring them up to speed, get them know that, look, this has been compromised, but we're doing something, so that they will also be conscious, so that if people, because those criminals might be contacting them because they have gotten the information now. But if you have informed them so that they know, anybody calling them that these are part of those criminals, they will not answer them. Then you must have internal procedure as well as keep incident log. You must also look at the areas of control and mitigation. And in these areas, you must also realize that, look, these are broken into two major parts, and those two major parts will be first and foremost, you're looking at the technical measures, then followed by physical. Technical measures are about the logical, the computer-based security measures you have, been able to establish. But in today's, practices, you cannot end it there, because you can have all the security in this world within your systems, within your, devices. How about if the phone is stolen? How about if the laptop is stolen? How about if the servers, routers, and switches are stolen? Data can still be compromised. Therefore, you must extend your security to the physical measures what type of locks you have, what type of doors, what type of burglary, you have CCTV, you have alarm systems, and even smoke detectors and all that to make sure you strengthen security. And also, you can look at pseudonymization, anonymization, and the encryption. In pseudonymization, you are trying to ensure you introduce unique identifiers and codes to make sure that certain sensitive and high-risk data are, of course, protected. Also, in anonymization, you are ensuring that such sensitive data and that can easily be compromised, and you may not need eventually anonymize, meaning you are removing them, from the time you are commencing the processing. In other words, ab initio. And then encryption, which has been here for years and is growing by the day, built around cryptography, helps you to also be able to protect data, especially when data, whether it is at rest or is in motion or in use, gets protected in codes that can only be decrypted after it has been encrypted from the point of the sender and then gets to the point of the receiver, who has the keys, the public key and the private keys, which are distributed amongst the players. They can then decrypt and be able to see the message. And of course, the CIA triad, we have dealt with this one. And of course, to the staff, what do you need to do? To the staff, you must ensure that they are trained. Knowledge is power. Without knowledge, and you say you are talking about data protection and privacy, and by extension, cybersecurity and information security, it will be an exercise in futility, because everything, most of the time, is people-based, is the humans. Because even the attack, once the people are aware of the right things to do and do it, they will be protected. Okay, and it begins with training. And that is why in this kind of free webinar that is powered by DataPro, it has a lot of value and also goes to support the government and the regulators, and of course, to identify with the global stakeholders. Now, the future is quite bright. And of course, a lot of things need to be known, and areas that will be impacted, beginning from the internet service providers, because all these are veritable areas that can be impacted. You have the data privacy for minors. These are vulnerable persons, even the aged, or the computer illiterates, because these are people that can be, of course, taken undue advantage of. The e-reader privacy policy disclosure, data sharing, you are moving data from one point to the other. Okay, so how protected will they be? Electronic monitoring of employees. We saw the fine of about $41 million, dollars. So how do you monitor legitimately? Do the employees even know their rights? Targeted marketing, data processing agreements, data security standard, or employee training. Of course, that is the way to focus. If you have not scheduled training, please do. Since the beginning of the year, we've been running for some people, and we believe any organization that has not scheduled, please, you may send your requests now to this information at the bottom of each of the slides. You can see in there contact info, info at datapro-nigeria.net for anything, inquiries and all that. Then the international privacy laws. The laws are also changing. Today, a lot is being done by government and the regulator. First and foremost, they are building partnership between the public and the private sector. And they have, of course, come up with a circular, which they have used to sensitize everybody. The bill I spoke to you about has already been approved by the FEC. What is remaining is the transmission to the National Assembly, which is the Data Protection Bill. Okay, over 50 ministries, departments, and agencies, MDAs, have been sensitized, and they are willing to play and be part of this. Many businesses are also using electronic channels already. And of course, look at the cashless is going to be digital platforms. So what it means, everything is moving, and we need to be aware of our the security, the need for security, and of course, the need to do the right things, and of course, of our rights. Increasingly today, data has become a very important item. Some are even saying, as time goes on, people may even be asking for reward. And probably that is also the reason when the social media and technology giants, today, I can't believe, is anybody paying for Facebook? Nobody pays to use Facebook. Nobody pays to use Twitter, use Instagram. Have you ever wondered why you are not being charged? Because they need you, they need your data. Your data is a resource for them to build traffic, to make their money through adverts. Okay, so it is important we realize that that is the key, and we must be conscious of our obligations. And then the child online protection policy has also been okayed by FEC, by the government of Nigeria, which is showing you that a lot of attention is being paid today on data protection. And just recently, the President Buhari, has also commissioned the 41 terabytes. You can imagine how huge that is. Terabyte memory capacity, all the way from kilobyte. You look at kilobyte, you look at megabyte, you look at the gigabyte, before you begin to talk about the terabyte, the petabyte, the exabyte, as well as the zettabyte and the yottabyte. That tells you the volume of data, showing you the preparedness to be able to accommodate, because we are building a digital economy. And in building a digital economy, you need capacity, you need infrastructure, you need the right system architecture to warehouse data. And also by extension, that is the national tier 4 data center in Kano. And it is aimed at improving digital economy. It's also going to create jobs. Look at what telecoms has done to Nigeria from the time of Obasanjo. And that's achievement, if it can be replicated in power, I can tell you Nigeria can go a very long way. Look at the number of jobs. Look at the kind of things we can do. We are in this program today is because we have the connectivity. I can still remember the days of Nitel. How difficult it was to own a phone, get a call, answer a call. As a matter of fact, it became a status symbol. To the extent they said it was attributed to one of the ministers then that telephone is not for poor people. How on earth can such a statement come from such kind of level of people? And then also is also the facility in Kano is also to enhance cyber security, provide storage facilities for both the public and private sector. Of course, the size of this storage is being touted to be around the range of 2.2 petabytes. You can see the huge volume. And then it is expected, based on the outlook, that as cooperation is going on between US and EU on data privacy framework, that within also the African region, countries in Africa will also begin to think about collaboration and of course consolidation, even though before now they were trying to build a data hub, but it's going to be extended to build capacity. Of course, prevention is better than cure. And what does it help us to do? It helps to ensure that we don't lose shareholders' confidence and other stakeholders, that consultancy fees are minimized in our organizations, and that loss of partners and our clients, our customers is minimized, and then long periods of regulatory oversight when we breach data protection and privacy regulation will be minimized, and then the expensive and time-consuming remedial actions that we want to undertake will be also reduced, and then we will be able to protect ourselves from increased personal liability, incarceration, sometimes imprisonment, or even, sometimes unfortunately death. Then liquidity challenges and competitive disadvantages will be avoided, and then the brand and reputational damage will be prevented. We will be able to, of course, reduce technology budget instead of it increasing, and then the staff attrition or staff turnover will be minimized, because if the organization is challenged, going through difficulties with regulators, with the authorities, and license is being threatened or operation is being threatened, because sometimes they'll seal up. Then you begin to see the right staff we need will be leaving. And then when all these issues and imbroglio is happening, you begin to see some related regulators coming in, particularly the Federal Inland Revenue Service, the FIRS, will come in. And their thinking usually is that if an organization is breaking one law, chances that that organization will also be breaking the tax law is very high. Therefore, if they have not conducted a tax audit, they'll come in immediately to conduct a tax audit. Therefore, at this stage, we will now be concluding, and part of our thoughts will go around ensuring that our online engagements, participation, and activities are safeguarded and that we protect and secure our data at all times. And of course, we are part of the ecosystem. The government is there, the data controllers are there, and on our own part, being the data subjects and data owners, we have a major role to play. The government will continue to promulgate laws, regulations, rules that will guide activities within this sphere. Of course, the data controllers will continue to collect the data, our personal data, and process them. But how well this happens depends on our level of knowledge. How well do we understand our role? How well do we protect our data? How well do we even know our rights? So that we can even seek redress when the chips are down. Therefore, the Data Privacy Day is quite important because it also serves as a reminder to this all-important factor, to this all-important item, to this issue that is occupying the central stage, that has been defined and ascribed as the new oil of the world, as the global gold, and that has produced lots and lots of millionaires and will continue to produce, and is also supporting technology, which is now the order of the day. And our lives, we are living now practically on the web, with our phones, with our laptops, every now and then. Therefore, there's huge value and there's need for us to remain conscious. Constant awareness is key. Protection, privacy, and security of our data, very important. We need to protect ourselves. Therefore, protect yourself, protect me, and protect everyone. Can we have a safe and secure society? Yes, we can. It's on this note I want to say a very big thank you for identifying with this global event, which is yielding lots and lots of value, and which DataPro, the technology-driven company, the pace setter in most of the areas it is playing, particularly in data protection and privacy, in compliance, in verification, in credit rating. They have always held their own, and they have always been the trailblazer. And I want to say a very big thank you to you and also to my colleagues.